We gather together in this immense space where things are less familiar, where church feels a little bit different. We gather in a shared loss of so much of what we held dear. We lost a building that represented more than we could ever itemize. But we gather to be together, to turn our hearts and minds toward what is good, to lift up what is of value, and to find our strength in the here and now.
Sing together now across our distances. Our song together this morning, our hymn is "This Is My Song." Good morning. Welcome. I'm the Reverend Joel Miller. I'm the interim minister here at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. So pleased to welcome you. My colleague Nathan Ryan is the associate minister here and giving the sermon remotely this morning by recording. We also have Kathy Smith, our director of family ministries. Well, she'll be giving a recorded version of the lesson. Kathy Judy, as you saw, was singing our hymns with us this morning. Mike Patton is working on tech. Leah is our music director, and Christy Howard, our worship associate this morning. So glad to have us all here together, even across the distances. We have, as you see, we're wearing our masks. If we're here live, there's only myself and Leah here in the sanctuary and Mike in the tech booth. We are being as safe as we can possibly be and still be here in the sanctuary so that we can be at least virtually in the building that houses our spiritual home. If you would like to text us a request to place a stone, that number to text is 504-334-8034. 504-334-8034. And now we go to our lesson with our Director of Family Ministries.
Good morning. This morning's lesson is a story called The Conference of the Birds. I had a bird friend, an owl friend, who was all lined up to help me tell the story. But when I went to wake him up this morning, he wasn't asleep in his nest, wasn't on the shelf with the other birds. He wasn't anywhere to be found, but we did find this note. It's right here. See if you can help me read it. What does it say? It says, "Off on an adventure," and it's signed Owl. Off on an adventure. I don't know what kind of adventure he thinks he's going on, or where he might be going, or who he might be seeing. You know, if you see my friend Owl, I wouldn't mind hearing about it. I got a picture right here. It might be easier to spot him. Found it on my computer from when we were typing up the story for y'all last night. There. That's my friend Owl helping me type. Such a helper, that Owl. Now, even if Owl isn't here with me, I'm sure I can tell the story. It won't be quite as good, but I'll tell it anyway. As I said, it's a story called The Conference of the Birds. It's an epic poem that was written centuries ago in Persia, a country very far away, by a Persian Sufi author and poet. His name was Faraduddin Attar, and the story goes like this. Long ago, all the birds in the land gathered together. The owl, the cardinal, the blue jay, the sparrow, the hawk, and many more. They gathered and chattered and chittered and chirped and hooted and spoke at length about their hopes and their dreams and their struggles and their community. They wondered if perhaps having a leader would be easier. A leader would be wise, hooted the owl. A leader would tell us what to do, said the robin. A leader would remind us that everyone, big and small, is important, chattered the sparrow. A leader would be loving and kind, like a friend, cooed the dove. A leader would tell us all to share, said the jay. A leader would keep us all safe, said the hawk. They wondered where such a leader might be found. I know of such a leader, said the hoopoe bird, and the birds all looked at him in amazement. Such a bird would be called the simorg. It lives in a place far away from here. And the birds chattered in wonderment and amazement because they didn't think such a leader could be found, but they were very excited to think that it might be so. And where could they go? And how would they get there? And the hoopoe spoke over the chatter. It's a long flight, very far away, and it might be dangerous, but the simorg might be the leader that we seek. Well, at the word dangerous, some of the birds looked a little frightened, but they all agreed to go on this quest for the simorg. And so the hoopoe bird took off, and the other birds all followed. They flew through nighttime. They flew through sunshine. They flew for days. Some of the birds began to look a little doubtful, for after all, no one except for the hoopoe bird had ever mentioned or seen or heard of this simorg. But they followed on. Some of the mountains that they crossed were very high. Some of the valleys were very deep. They came to one mountain that was almost on fire and so tall that the sparrow fluttered and said, I don't think I can make that. I'm too small. The other birds gathered around and said, keep trying. We know you can do it. Here, we'll help. And the stronger birds helped the smaller birds. The birds with sharp eyes found food for them. And as they flew, as they went on their journey, they began to realize that each bird brought something important to the journey, something special. And eventually, they landed on the edge of a great lake. And the hoopoe bird said, Here is the simorg. Where? Chattered all the birds. We don't see him. Where can he be? Where? And the hoopoe said, Come stand next to me, next to the lake. And all the birds lined up next to the lake. And they looked down and they saw their reflection. But they also saw the reflection of every other bird. Oh, they all said as the realization dawned on them. The simorg wasn't just one bird. No, the simorg was all of the birds. For each of the birds brought something unique and special and important. The community wasn't whole unless all of the birds were there. and together they could do anything.
I will place a stone for you at this time, as we customarily do in our worship celebrations of life. Text your request to us right away. Here is the phone number, 504-334-8034. Also, we send a condolence card this morning to Janina Fuller on the death of her ex-husband and the father of her children, Bob Lamb. This first stone is for George Floyd. He died on Monday. It's for George Floyd, Mr. Floyd, and his family and his community. Mr. Floyd's death was an outrageous injustice, one of the many injustices that our people of color have long endured. This stone is for our beloved people, our beloved black people, our beloved brown people, our people of color. We pray that you be relieved of these burdens. We place this stone for you this morning. You are beloved. We love you. Mr. Floyd's killing is one of a continuing chain of so many. Racism exists in our culture. It exists even in our bodies as we live out our interconnected lives. It is good that we work to end it, both within our own selves and in our society at large. Demonstrations formed across our country this past week. There was some violence. We don't condone it. We understand some of it. I also want to point out that some of that violence was started by people from outside those communities. I place this stone for our country, for the sorrows of what is happening among us, for the sorrows that there are those who seek to continue the injustices. A stone for our longing for justice, for freedom for all our people. This stone is a personal stone. My family, in their homes in Rochester, New York last night, were surrounded by rioting and gunfire. They are safe this morning. This is a stone from Minneapolis. Vicky Berry's daughter-in-law. Her grandfather died. A stone for justice and peace. A stone for the people in all our communities beset by injustice and violence. A stone for Emmy and for Sarah. For our brothers and sisters of color, we stand with you. A stone for justice. For justice and peace in our troubled country. A stone for the Guidry family this morning. This stone, with hope for a better world. For Janina. And this stone for all of us. May our lives be blessed with freedom, with compassion, and with resolve to continue our work for justice in this world for all people. We light our chalice, the symbol of our gathering, the flame lit. I invite you to say the words of our chalice lighting with me. With hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
Making you a promise today. Today, this entire service, we will not mention the pandemic or coronavirus or COVID-19, well, except for this one time. Anyway, we are always trying to strike a balance in this church between acknowledging the reality that surrounds us, the suffering, the sadness, the mysteries, the anxieties, and giving people a sanctuary, a safe place to not carry all that you're carrying all week long. And we need to do both. So today, my read is that most of you are sick of hearing about, sorry about the pun, you're done hearing about this stuff, at least for the next 30 minutes. It shall not be named. You need a break. But what shall we do if we aren't going to talk about the thing that is making us, well, making this whole aesthetic problem? We're still trying to figure out how to do this service. Each week it's a little different. Today, I'm recording the sermon. It's in 3 parts. Joel is leading the liturgy. He's actually live in the sanctuary. So while he is there, today is Friday for me, but it's Sunday for you. So he's in the sanctuary. I don't know where I am then or now. But anyway, today I wanted us to explore this idea that the church in these times, I especially wanted to look at what is essential and what is universal salvation and what is individual absolution in these times of, well, this. I know some of you are sick of the new normal. I know some of you see your religious neighbors opening up church, and you might feel a little left behind. I know some of you are tired or worried or sick or bored or trying to wrangle kids or aging parents. So do whatever you can to be at peace, at least for this time that we're together. We're here together when what looks normal is different and what looks gone is here.
This reading this morning is entitled Miracle, written by Alana Bell. What else to call the bare branches I'd bought at the neighborhood bodega? They came back to life that winter. I'd carried them home, dry, wrapped in paper. I stuck them in a square vase. And as an afterthought, I filled it with water. I don't know when I noticed the pale pink shoots sprouting from the submerged ends. Wild, reaching roots like ginseng or the hair on an old woman's chin. Then tiny green leaves began to appear at the tips, curling over themselves with the sheer effort of growing. I'd thought the sticks were dead. And now, I recall being in the choke of a fog I did not have a name for and didn't think I would survive. I could describe it for you now. I could try. The nights woke with my pulse pounding through, the heaviness of each breath, how the effort of being inside my body felt like burning. But what I really want to tell you is this: how in the parch of that long drought, the people I loved kept bringing me water. Water. Though I turned my back and did not answer to my name, though I flung the cup away, let me say it plain. I wanted to die. But something in me, some tiny bulb still alive under all that rotted wood, kept drinking, kept right on drinking.
Jubilate Deo, jubilate Deo, Alleluia. Praises, sing to God above, serve God with song.
Joy
We gather together in this immense space where things are less familiar, where church feels a little bit different.
For when 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them. The president is right, sort of. Last week, he deemed the church essential, which is correct. The church is absolutely essential. The building, however, is not. Us gathering together in numbers large enough to threaten public health is not. So let's have an actual honest conversation about what is essential church and what is essential liberty of the church. First of all, this president has absolutely no right ever to tell us, a worshiping congregation, what we are or are not allowed to be. Ever. Period. It is not his business. The church is here to hold Pontius Pilate accountable for injustice. It is never here to wait for Pilate to tell us whether we are or are not allowed to meet. And in the same week that our president declared us essential, our own state legislature started the process of taking away the right of this church to decide whether or not it has guns in its building. The same week the president declared us essential, our legislature is taking away our rights. So let me be as clear as I can. The church is absolutely essential. It always was and always will be. But it is not essential because some government official declared it so, in some perverted attempt to score political points. It is not essential that we defy public health warnings and gather in ways that could cause harm. The church is essential because when 2 or 3 are gathered, there is God. And by God, I mean that pull towards justice. And right now, George Floyd's death and Breonna Taylor's death and Ahmaud Arbery's death prove that there needs to be a pull towards justice. The fact that prisoners are left in confined spaces in this state during a health crisis proves our gathering to bring about justice is needed. The fact that we've all but stopped talking about the treatment of migrants and those hundreds of orphans that this administration created because it refused to come up with a plan when it separated parents from children, that needs to be addressed. The fact that individualism at the expense of universal salvation is the order of the day is evidence that we must be pulling the world towards justice. That is the essential work of this church. In this time of distraction, justified distraction, I've got kids right there, I get it. We must still be focused on justice. We must still be doing the work of God, the essential work. And by that I mean the work of bending the arc towards justice, even when we can't gather in person. I've seen signs on church buildings that say the church is closed. So let me be clear. The building is closed. Neither this church nor the holy work of this church to create heaven on earth is closed. It can never be.
I invite you now to sing now together our hymn, "Where is Our Holy Church?"
Where is our holy church?
the free minds truly seek with character one. Where is our paradise in aspiration's sight, wherein we hope to see arise the 1,000 years of right.
Why did I listen to your calling, O God? Why did I step out on faith, O love? Why did I lift my feet, ignore my fear, and run toward the unknown? Now I am far from home. My heart aches for a familiar land, for people who greeted me with kisses. I can't see the way back. It doesn't exist. I can't see the way forward, but I long for the place I knew. By the time I find my way, my children will be grown and gone. But today you are silent. The voice that whispered wind into my sails has stilled. Fear rises in me like a tsunami from a far shore. Tonight, I will sleep without comfort.
We do indeed live in uncomfortable times. We have, though, the comfort of knowing we are together in community. We have the comfort of knowing that we can make our lives meaningful through the work we do together in our congregation, or through the way our congregation inspires us in our homes, our places of work, our schools, our communities. It is for this that we support our congregation with finances as well as the time and love of our lives. We take our offering now. We encourage you to contribute at this time to the church and to its ministries, to each other and to the world around us. We take our offering.
been 4 years. These past 4 years, Unitarian Universalists have struggled with understanding the difference between individual absolution and universal salvation. By that I mean struggling with finding a way to be okay with yourself and your own soul at the expense of everyone else's betterment. It was almost 4 years ago this summer. It will be 4 years this summer when I got a call from a church member. She was stuck in her attic. This was in the middle of our awful summer, and I thought it was over, but it wasn't. A day later, after it was clear that almost half of our state had flooded, I put a plea out on Facebook. All that I asked was for people to notice us, to notice that we are struggling. There were plenty of comments, but there was one comment. Doesn't matter who made the comment because it's emblematic of other comments I've heard over time. I've been familiar with these type of comments. I heard them early and often after Hurricane Katrina and the federal flood that followed. The comment simply said something to the effect of, "This is what happens when you're a red state and you vote against your own social safety net." Basically, it was this way's person saying, I feel uncomfortable knowing that you're suffering. I need to find an explanation for your suffering so that it doesn't affect me directly, because I don't like feeling uncomfortable. I will do what I need to do so that I stop having that feeling. I will do what I need to do to find my individual absolution at the expense of your literal saving. Now, this wasn't everyone, of course. Hundreds of people sent tens of thousands of dollars to the church, let alone to other organizations that were doing relief work. You sent people actually into the building to do relief work and help people gut their houses and things like that. But this idea of individual absolution was still present. A few months later, after the election of Donald Trump, I saw a dramatic rise in this ideology from many of my white friends who buy into that red-blue dichotomy and think they're on the blue side. I saw it on our face. So many people who had no idea how much our country could still respond to racist dog whistles. I think many people in Louisiana were not surprised by. But they so quickly embraced this idea of resistance without ever doing any analysis, that I could see at least, to examine exactly how entrenched Unitarian Universalism is in the power elite that would render such a rebellion just an act of show. What I mean by that is I did not see a lot of effort at universal salvation in much of an attempt to understand at least what undercurrents have shaped the country and its sins. I saw white theological and political progressives aggressively pursuing their own individual absolution from pollution and slavery and racism and systemic oppression at the expense of universal salvation. I see it today with the unwillingness to turn off the most partisan cable news sources, the pervasiveness of identifying this church as a sanctuary, not from weariness or the oppression of the status quo or the exhaustion of the existential questions of just being alive. No, I've heard this idea of wanting a sanctuary from our neighbors, as if their brokenness might contaminate us. Ever since they created white and black to keep the enslaved and the indentured from uniting to overthrow the power elite, there have always been these divisions. White can't be black unless the power elite demolish you like they've done to black people. The North can't be culpable for slavery lest they figure out where their wealth came from and at whose expense. The South must be the only place segregation existed, because if we mark them, we don't have to face it ourselves. I have yet to hear any Unitarian Universalist congregation in this age of resistance examine its own endowments to determine how much of its profits came from enslavement, and I've not heard any plan to pay that money back with interest to the descendants of the kidnapping. So long as we keep dividing, so long as we make you side between police or black people, or between business interest or public health interest, so long as we keep making these false dichotomies, we will not get to the promised land. But this church can be the difference. So let's use this time that I promised you we would not name for this 1 hour, to let go of individual absolution and instead embrace a love for all people. Everything is getting tossed up in the air right now. So let's be intentional about where we place things when they fall. I know not everyone is wearing masks right now. I know that disgusting partisan disease that this country is infected with has made even mask wearing a partisan issue. And we have a choice. We can play into it, or we can work for universal salvation. I know you might go out and see people not wearing masks or at large parties or feel indignant, and you are right to feel that way. But remember, I'm scared. I'm willing to bet that you were scared, and I'm willing to bet the people who are not wearing masks or congregating or flagrantly disregarding medical advice are also scared. So in your interactions, are you pointing this out to them so that you can find your own individual absolution? Or are you working toward universal salvation? There is a burden weighing us down when we are stuck in this individual absolution mindset. We aren't looking out for what is good for every person. Instead, everyone is a threat. Everyone might question your individual absolution. The virus is already making us look at people. I did it. There's the one. Okay, so 2 times I'll mention that. The virus is already making us look at people as a threat anyway. So we cannot afford to have anything else making other people a threat. They are not. They are a beloved family and friends and neighbors. Our Universalist ancestors knew better. They knew that none are saved until all are saved. So remember that everyone is scared right now. Everyone is uncertain. And this church can be the church that gives water to those who feel like they have been dried out or are dying. This can be the church that loves all people until justice will be done. So yes, on this Sunday, let us be the church that proves we are essential. Not by gathering in a building when it is unsafe, even though I really want to, even though I miss you very much and I want to be with you. No, let's be the church that proves that when 2 or more are gathered, there too is justice. There too is a better world. Amen.
Let's sing together now our closing hymn, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. These closing words of the benediction are from my colleague, Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear. And the stakes are very high. Take courage. For deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. Go now in courage. live your lives for justice. Amen.